Stop making this one drawing mistake that's ruining your art. Hey fellow creatives, today I'll be talking about a really common mistake that is making your drawings look not realistic, not have super high contrast, and ultimately just making sketches boring. I'm going to be giving specific examples so you can tell if this is a problem that you have and then how to fix it. Plus, if you stick around, I'll give you a bonus at the end, which if you do this at the beginning of your drawings, it will make them 10 times better. Timestamps are in the description below, so let's get into it. So what is this detrimental mistake that I'm talking about? If I had to summarize it, it's basically using the wrong pencils for different parts of your drawing process. This is super important because even if you're a phenomenal drawer and you can get things in proportion, you know where to shade, you're not going to be able to have a very polished, clear, crisp drawing if you're not using the right pencils for the shading, for the sketching and outlining, if you're not blending correctly. Or you might be one of those people that uses one pencil for the entire drawing. Now, I'm not shaming you. I used to do this all the time because I was just like, oh, I'm that good. I can use one pencil for the entire thing. I literally did an entire portrait of Denzel Washington with a mechanical pencil. It looked good, I gotta say, but also it could have looked so much better if I would have used drawing pencils, the right drawing pencils for different parts, and blending stumps, but I was still proud of that. So what are some telltale signs that you can use to figure out if you have this problem of using the wrong pencils? First, when you mess up, are your lines difficult to erase? So this could happen in a couple of different scenarios. As I showed you in another video, when you first make that initial sketch for your drawing, you don't want to be pressing down really hard. You really want to be loose and have multiple lines and mostly use straight lines so that later when you're like, I'm trying to tighten this up a bit, you can pick the correct line and erase the others. So if you want to watch that video for general sketching tips, that might be really helpful, so I'll link it above. Otherwise, something else that you might be doing that's making your drawings difficult to erase when you mess up is using a pencil too hard to do your initial sketch with. Usually the go-to hardness that I use for a pencil when I'm just sketching out a contour drawing is HB, which stands for hard and black. So it gets that initial definition in there without being too soft or too fine and too hard. And as long as you're using those light pencil strokes to do that contour drawing at first, you should be able to erase fairly easily. Another mistake I often see is you look at this finished drawing, or at least it's supposed to be finished, and it just doesn't have enough contrast. All of the places where you see graphite on the paper look more or less the same value, and there's not a lot of depth. This might be because you tried to pull the thing that I did when I did my drawing of Denzel and use one pencil for everything or a couple pencils for everything. If you do this, your drawing is gonna look more flat and less dynamic. So I recommend starting with that HB pencil for your initial contour drawing, cleaning up those lines a little bit, and then focus on your middle values. So like your value 5, it usually goes 1 through 9 or 1 through 12. You're gonna focus on your middle value 5. What are those middle shades in your drawing that aren't really dark but also aren't really bright? Put those in first. I might use like a 4B or a 6B for this. Then start building those darkest darks in shadows with maybe an 8B, 9B, 10 to 12B. So in a graphite drawing, remember you're building those darks from the middle value. And the reason you need to use these different kinds of pencils is because even if you're pressing down really hard with that first HB pencil, it's not gonna get as dark as it would if you were using a 12B pencil and pressing down really hard. So I encourage you to try those side by side. Try your different pencils, be like, okay, how dark can I get a 6B? And compare that to a 12B or a 9B or a 2H, just so you can get a feel for what you can do with your different pencils. The third thing is if you're looking at your drawing and it looks very rigid, like you're looking into those shadows and thinking, okay, this doesn't look like a soft shadow. I want to blend this out a bit more, I can either see the pencil lines or it just doesn't look smooth. You could do a couple things. First of all, let's make sure the pencil you're using is not too hard. If you're using a 2H or an H or even maybe a B for some of those darker shadows, that pencil is not soft enough to get the dark, shadowy, smooth effect that you're wanting. So we need to switch pencils entirely, get something a little more softer, higher numbers that have that B on it. Otherwise, maybe you are using an 8B, a 10B, and you're like, this looks rough and rigid. You need to try blending stumps, my friend. Completely changes the way your drawing looks. So after you finish kind of putting in those darks, you want to go over and just kind of use circular motions with your blending stumps to smooth out those dark values, smooth out those shadows, so your drawing will actually look more realistic, less like you just kind of took a pencil and went, Sorry, that was a weird sound. So use blending stumps. When you get blending stumps, a lot of times what comes with it or what you can get with it is a little sandpaper block. And when the end of your blending stump gets too dirty, just sand it off and you have a clean blending stump again. I'll put the links to my favorite supplies in the description so you can easily access them. And finally, I love this bonus. Here's your bonus. Doing this at the beginning of your drawings will make them 10 times better. What I want you to do is before you even start, before you even do that contour drawing, I want you to kill the white. Well, that sounds violent. No, we ain't killing people. We're killing the white on the paper. So this may work best if you have graphite powder. If you have graphite powder, you're just gonna brush it on there. You're just getting some graphite pigment onto your paper so it's no longer bright white. If you don't have graphite powder, that's fine. What I do is some light cross hatching. So I usually take an HB or a B and just very lightly go back and forth in different directions on the page and then use a blending stump to blend that out so that my paper is no longer white. I'm getting a little bit of, I'm starting my drawing with a little bit of a darker value. And the reason this makes your drawings look really good in the end is because then you can take your kneadable eraser, which if you don't have a kneadable eraser, stop right now, go get yourself a kneadable eraser. I'll link one of those in the description too. So I have a kneadable eraser and I have, it's one of those things that looks like a pen, but it's an eraser. It's for like those really fine lines that you want to be really bright, but your drawing will actually end up being more realistic if you later take your eraser for those lighter highlights that are above that base value you've just created. Use your kneadable eraser, use that tiny eraser to subtract out those highlights. And doing that subtraction rather than just leaving the white parts white will actually make your drawing look more realistic. I want you to try that. Let me know how it goes. And now you know which pencils to use for what parts of your process. Oh, and you're gonna use those fine pencils for hair, for example, like eyelashes, or just like little pieces of hair. Like if you were drawing me right now, these little hairs that are going out like this, you might block in my hair in general with other pieces, but those particular strands that you want to really stand out, you might use a fine or a 2H to draw that. So I hope this was helpful and I will see you in my next video.